So yeah,
Yeah.
so look, I think we'll kick off. So look, again, thanks everybody for joining us today. We have an action-packed webinar. As you can see from my screen, we're going to talk about primarily live costs. And this is QuickBooks for construction, budget tracking, and more without reading the notes exactly as they are. So I'll just go through the agenda for today. Is just I'll do some quick introductions for people who are going to speak, me being one of them. Very briefly, we'll touch on QuickBooks Online, and then from there we'll move on to LiveCosts and give an overview of that. And then right at the end we have a Q&A. So look, we're not pressed for time, but we understand that people are on their lunch. So we'll try and get through the presentation, you know, within a half an hour to 35 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions after that. It may run over as well. So look, we appreciate you being here as well. Submit any questions that you have through the chat box. Again, we're recording the webinar, and look, the questions will be answered at the end. So without further ado, we have from LiveCosts, not me, but Kieran Brennan, and I'll be introducing him later. So he's going to co-host this webinar with myself. I'm Damien O'Driscoll. I'm a director here in Accountancy Software. So we're a wholesale QuickBooks partner. We've been supplying QuickBooks in Ireland for the past decade. We've a large customer base. We sell the product at the same price that Intuit do. It's just we're an Irish company. We're based in Ireland, in Dublin. We've offices in Dublin and Louth, County Louth. And we employ, obviously, people who answer the phones in Ireland. So you'd struggle with that with some online software products. So that's a separator for us. So what we do as an organization, typically we do a lot of migrations from other accounting packages to QuickBooks Online. So, you know, Sage, Big Red Cloud, Xero, you know, Zoho, any of those products, we typically have a migration process where we can migrate the data from those solutions, pull it all into QuickBooks. So you're starting with your own data in QuickBooks, obviously QuickBooks Desktop as well, if anybody still has it. And you're starting with your own live data from us doing the migration. And that's a big part of our business, and it's ever growing as well. We offer QuickBooks training, and we offer support as well for some customers. QuickBooks is a very, very intuitive product. So for the main and for many customers, they don't require any support outside of the support that's built into the application, and it works really, really well. And we're happy to do that. We have some customers who obviously need just a little bit extra help. You know, they mightn't have a strong accounting function within the business, and they would require us from time to time. We obviously also do training. We do live training. Our trainers are accountants. So you're getting an accountant that is training you with many years of industry experience as well. And that leads into the consultation side of things as well. So we consult with our clients, and similarly with LiveCosts here today, you know, we seek out the best of breed products that work really well with QuickBooks and that are really useful for our customers. And that's what we do. And we consult with our clients on that process as well. QuickBooks is a very inexpensive solution for an accounts package, as you're probably aware. You know, it's kind of 30 or 35 euros per month, which is very inexpensive for what it is. And it's a great solution. And like with LiveCosts, they have a seamless integration to the product as well. So to enhance the functionality, certainly around the construction industry, as we're going to talk about today. QuickBooks Online, if some of you are familiar with it, some of you may not be familiar with it, but you know, it's a full accounts package, and it's aimed at the SME market. It's relatively inexpensive. It has many tools in it that I won't go through today with you, because today is more about LiveCosts, and we'll see some of them functions when Kieran is presenting for us as well. But certainly some of the some of the attributes that are built into this product, seamlessly linked to your bank account. So, that whole area of reconciliation becomes much, much easier. There's a whole marketplace of add-on solutions that you can integrate in this to make life more efficient and effective for a business, and certainly small businesses. The accounts payable side of the businesses can be helped a lot with obviously like LiveCosts and so on and so forth. It manages, inventory to an extent. It's not a full-blown stock management solution. There are full-blown stock management solutions that link seamlessly to it, but it does multi-currency. All the things that you'd expect in an accounts package, it has it there. Full reporting, access it anywhere. It's backed up by Intuit. So you've got a really strong back end for that. Intuit, I think, and currently have about 8 million businesses that use QuickBooks Online. So, it is a beast of a product, and certainly the biggest online accounting package that is out there. And they're consistently and constantly updating it and upgrading it as new features come for that. So look, without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Kieran, who's going to go through LiveCosts and demo some elements of that for you as well. And look, any questions, pop them into the chat. We will answer them at the very end, and we will go through that. So if Kieran wants to take over, and look, thanks everybody for turning up and taking the time. So Kieran, I'll send it over to you. So I'll stop sharing.
Lovely, thanks, Damien. Okay. You might just confirm you can see that screen, Damien?
Yeah.
Great stuff.
I'll say it, yeah.
Great stuff. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kieran Brennan. I'm one of the co-founders at LiveCosts.com. So as Damien mentioned, we are an Irish company. I did see with some of the people coming in, we've got some customers that are on here. So some of this I'll be covering this stuff that you already know. To be honest, most of the stuff that I'm covering is generally just an introduction. So you'll probably have seen or heard of a lot of stuff that I'm covering here today if you are existing LiveCosts customers. So just as a little bit of a background, I'm just going to run through some high level stuff, like just give you a quick intro to who we are, what we do, types of problems we solve, and some of the results that we give our customers. So the platform is developed by us here in Ireland, in Blanchardstown, and we are a construction only tool that we integrate with accounting softwares. There's about 11,000 projects on there today. There's over 1.5 billion worth of project value on there today. About 1,400 people every day logging in to LiveCosts. So the problem that we solve is generally this, right? If you've gone and bought QuickBooks and you now want to track project data, right? QuickBooks is limited in what it can do around projects, especially around construction projects with the level of detail we need to. So we can't go there, right? We can't go there to get instant financial reports or deep financial reports. So we find ourselves generally going back into what we find a lot of QuickBooks and QuickBooks and can a lot of the time would be spreadsheets. And getting the data into those spreadsheets from a project tracking perspective is difficult because none of those systems have any connection point to each other. So we leave us with a choice. If we decide to use QuickBooks as our main account system, and we're going to start looking to track project data, if we decide to do that in QuickBooks, we're going to limit ourselves in terms of who can actually have access to that data. So we might end up in a situation where we have certain people in the company who are responsible for tracking costs or creating costs, so for site form and order materials, that type of stuff, who have no right or no real need for to be around QuickBooks. And now we have a disconnection between where the costs are actually being incurred on the project and where they're being tracked, right? So what LiveCosts can do is it can basically connect everyone together in a seamless way to make sure that we're all connected to the project. And we can integrate that then into QuickBooks or whatever account system you're on. The advantage of that is going to be, as we say, QuickBooks was never designed to manage construction projects, right? QuickBooks, as Damien has already highlighted, was designed as an SMB tool, very, very cost-effective tool to manage your day-to-day accounts, connect to your bank account. That's what it's been corely designed to do, and it does a phenomenal job at doing that. Where it falls down for a lot of construction companies is when we want to get instant access to real-time data around reporting of construction projects, fluctuation of material costs, instant reconciliation between PO delivery, or even give our site team access to do POs, that type of stuff. It doesn't do that very well, and it's okay because it was never designed to do that. So where we come along is we say, okay, you're a construction company. QuickBooks has a marketplace and you want to now track detailed project costs. You want to get a handle on your day-to-day construction costs. That's where we come in and we connect everyone together. So example being on this particular slide here, if you had even an external QS, for example, that was just working on one particular project and you want to give them access to that particular project so they can see the financials that are coming in, coming out, that sort of stuff, they're never going to be in QuickBooks, right? So LiveCosts will allow you to set permission sets around the roles and set permission sets that make sense to those particular roles so everybody can be connected. It's a very simple product in how it works. And what we do is we essentially, everything revolves around the project. And we use very simple interface to understand exactly what's happening at any given time. So we're not an accounting product, right? We don't have the complex look and feel of an accounting product. We're very much trying to keep things simple so we can just get an understanding of what's happening on a project. When we set a project up in LiveCosts, the difference between setting it up in the accounting software is generally the level of detail that we can go into. So when I click into LiveCosts here, we have what we call a projects dashboard. And I just set up a little project for us today just to show you. But this will show all the active projects we have on at any given time, what's in progress, what's being completed, what do we got archived. Again, being completed is useful if we're doing another tender or pricing another job. Essentially, we can look back on that, hold a bit of a postmortem. Are we making money on that particular task or role? Where do we make money? Where do we lose money on these projects? So again, it's getting into the fine detail of how the company performs from a financial perspective at a project level, not just as a company level. When you set your projects up, you can see here, we're going to track both two things. We're going to track the income and we're going to track the costs, right? Are we making money? Again, very, very simple. When we structure a project, we can break the project down. So I just set a project up here and I gave it a contract value and I gave it a budget that we're going to track against that contract value. To track the cost, then we can get into some detail. So some companies will just keep things really, really simple. They just say, I've got a total cost budget. If I deliver against that, I know I'm making money. Happy days. We can just continue as a company knowing that we're actually profitable on these projects. Other companies will go into more detail and say, well, I want to add in more phases to this. I want to just, carve out the electrical phase and that will have a budget of whatever the case might be to that. Maybe that's a subcontract agreement that we've outsourced. I might want to carve out another phase called, plumbing or whatever the case might be, and that has a budget. And again, it comes down to each individual use case and what you want to see on these reports when you're digging in. When you click into a phase, we can go a layer deeper. So if I look in at any phase, I can give that a cost name. A lot of our customers will take the summary page of the bill of quants, for example, and they just take that straight into LiveCosts and they create projects off that. So again, we're looking at the expectation of what the project costs us, which is a quote or an estimate. We're now making that real in LiveCosts, and we can actually sync that into the final destination being the accounting software as well. So when you structure your project, we'd always recommend, what do you want to see here in terms of your reporting? What are we looking at when we want to run a report and we want to just have a quick look at the data? What are we looking at, right? What do we need to see? What's important to us? Once I click into a phase, I can jump in and start to break these costs down. So we've just 17,800 or so worth of costs here built up against this project. And I can start to break that down into labor, materials, subcontract, plant machinery, or you can create your own unique cost types as well. Okay, so we can start to break down and then instantly understand exactly where we're spending money. What LiveCosts does well is it starts to track the committed costs. Every time a purchase order is raised in LiveCosts, we create an amber status on that. And the amber status basically tells us that the commitment has been made, which means we can also make that commitment from site. So for example, again, we go back to our example of maybe a site foreman or somebody on site or somebody that's working out in the field has permission to maybe order materials. Do we want that person in around QuickBooks? Is QuickBooks the right place for them to be ordering POs, or do they have to come back to the office to raise a PO? Is that the most effective way to do that? We would say no. We can set up access via the mobile app. And the mobile app means then we can limit permission sets. We can control what people can do. But if someone, for example, walks into the suppliers in Chadwicks today, makes an order, we have that information being picked up live from that device and spinning in against these dashboards. So once the PO gets raised, it'll create what we call a committed cost. It'll pick up that cost. It'll spin it against the dashboard. What it'll also do is it lines that cost up for delivery. Now, not every company is fascinated and has a process around, we've got to have a three-way matching process for invoicing when they come in that says we've got to have proof of order, proof of delivery, and that's the only way we're going to approve these in QuickBooks. But when you do have that process in place, LiveCosts will allow you to do that. And what we do is we simply then just open up the mobile app, allows us to take a snap off our phone of that delivery docket, and we're reconciling PO and delivery then instantly from site. What we're doing is reducing the workload on the administrators that have to look at this. So a lot of the time in a construction company, the person that's placing the order understands where that order is going. So i.e. I'm ordering blocks today for the project. I know where them blocks are for. So because I'm the one that's raising the order. And then a lot of the time the invoice is actually being processed by someone else who doesn't understand that. So we get this crossover between where should I deploy this cost, or there's a slowdown in the time that it takes to actually get an invoice in and get that cost rated. In LiveCosts, the person that's raising the PO understands where that cost is going. They simply just tick a box. All right. So that cost gets deployed to that project. The delivery then from site can be reconciled against that on site. So again, we're just taking little steps to reduce the admin role. When an invoice comes into LiveCosts, we then use machine learning to extract data from invoices. So what does that mean? It means we can automate the invoice reconciliation process. So rather than looking at an invoice manually, trying to understand what project belongs to, should it be paid, should it be posted on QuickBooks now, all of these questions that we have when we process the invoices. What we use is a data extraction tool built on machine learning that understands the data that comes in on documents, which means that we can just simply take a scan of the invoice. So we can just drop the invoices into LiveCosts, email them into LiveCosts, whatever the case might be. There's other data extraction tools for invoices out there, the likes of Dex and auto entry and these tools. They do this. They do it at an invoice reconciliation point of view to stop us having to input data into systems. We've essentially modeled off the back of them. We like them. We like what they do. They like how much time they saved. And we've used them in the past where we've said, wouldn't it be really cool if there's one of those for construction? And that got us thinking, what would it have to do for it to be just built for construction, right? So we take the good bits from that, is essentially sucking the data off the invoice, right? There's one thing. It stops us having to manually input any data. That's one time saver. Now we're going to start picking up the construction questions. Who ordered this material? What project does this material belong to? Do we have a delivery docket against this material? Has the delivery been fully completed? Am I missing any goods from this? So we'll pick up all of those nitty-gritty construction questions that we see on these documents. We're going to significantly reduce the amount of time that you're going to spend processing invoices, and then we can increase the accuracy in which we do so as well. One of the key points that Damien touched on was in QuickBooks, we can track the inventory, right? So we can track the inventory in QuickBooks. And a lot of time that's just down to sort of an idea of what's coming in and out of the company, right? But what LiveCosts can do from a smart stance is that we have a pricing catalog, which is essentially how we look at the inventory, right? Now, what's smart about LiveCosts is that when an invoice comes into the company, we can actually extract the data at a line item level too. And the line item level means we can basically align that data back to a catalog and tell you if you're being overcharged for materials, right? It's a really cool feature. And what that means is, for example, if I go to my supplier, and even if this is at a project specific level, right? So it's not just a generic rate. If I've gone out and actually priced items or materials for a particular project, I can take that goods, I can list that into LiveCosts through a simple upload of a spreadsheet. And what LiveCosts will do through its machine learning is that it understands then when it sees them invoices coming in throughout the duration of the project, whether we've been overcharged. So for example, I don't know, I'm staring at a plasterboard wall here. So plasterboard slab was an item that lives in our catalog, and it has a couple of prices attached to it. It has a default price. It has a price that we pay maybe when we're going to buy single items. And I've gone out and actually got a price on a particular project, which is the link center. When the invoice comes in, LiveCosts will instantly understand what project that belongs to, and also it look at the catalog, analyze the catalog, look at the product code, look at the price, and it basically tell us we've been overcharged for that item. Okay, so we can actually look at data and look at catalog in a different sense to how it's looked at and how it's managed in QuickBooks. It also makes that data available to us at the PO point. So inventory in QuickBooks, it can be there, it's good, it has a purpose. Inventory in LiveCosts, we're repurposing data. We can see last buy price, we can see project specific price, and we can also make that data available to anyone that's ordering materials as well on the LiveCosts side. Other stuff we can do in LiveCosts is around the tracking of direct labor. So, you know, QuickBooks has some nice integration there. LiveCosts can do it obviously we can do it on the LiveCosts side as well. It's essentially digital timesheets. So tracking the labor costs and being able to deploy that labor cost. The difference between ours, I suppose, would be that we will look at getting into a bit more detail, not just at the project level, but at the phase level as well. So not just saying that Tim O'Toole worked on the Link Center today for 8 hours, and we deploy a cost to that. Well, we can say Tim O'Toole was working on the Link Center for 4 hours on the electrical phase, 4 hours in the plumbing phase, and he was late or went home early for an hour as well. So we can get into a little bit more detail again at the nitty-gritty at the project level. Subcontract agreements would be the same thing as well. So we can actually manage whether they're on a schedule of rates, day rates, fixed price contracts, whatever the case might be. All your subcontract agreements can be managed within LiveCosts as well. And really the advantage of just having these data points connected to a project, and you can see that everything is revolving around the project, different to how QuickBooks would look at reporting, because it's essentially reporting at a company level. We're reporting on a project level, and because we have all these data points connected, it makes it very, very easy for us to generate real-time reports. So within LiveCosts, we can actually spin up real-time reports. We can filter them by different data points, and we can have access to see what's happening on the project on a day-to-day basis. And to make sure that we don't duplicate any data, like for example, we've gone to the hassle now of scanning data in, so we don't have to manually input any invoicing. We want to make sure we don't have to duplicate that on the QuickBooks side. So we'll have a direct sync in with QuickBooks as well. Now, generally what that looks like on the QuickBooks side is when invoices come into LiveCosts, they'll come in through this inbox. We can drag and drop them in. As I said, we can email them in. Some of our suppliers actually just give the email address, which is your own unique email address, to suppliers, and then it just fills this inbox for you. Then it's just a case of them being processed, and we process them through, we reconcile them against PO, reconcile them against delivery, reconcile against project costing. All that type of stuff is done for you within LiveCosts. And it just means that when you open up your documents folder in LiveCosts, we can then open up supplier invoices. And when we can see these invoices coming in, we can see that the ones that have been synced and unsynced by just giving a little green tick to say, well, this one has actually already gone into QuickBooks. Once we open up the QuickBooks tab to see when they've been viewed in QuickBooks, we basically land them in on the QuickBooks side with whatever relevant data. So we don't have to double import any data on the LiveCosts side. But the important part about the data that's landing in the QuickBooks, what we have to understand is everything's been done with this. Okay, so it's been already job costed, reconciled against PO, checked for delivery, even checked at a line item level to see, does the line items that come in on this document align to what we expect to pay from a material aspect. So we're capturing a lot more at a project level than what's being offered to us on the account side as well. The other stuff that we can do that's nice and neat as well is you'll notice that on our project here, we had a budget, right? And we also had a contract value, right? So in this example, we had a contract value set up of 200K, but I can actually access, Damien mentioned QuickBooks is linked to your bank account, right? LiveCosts is never going to go and connect to every bank account. But what we can do is we can access, through our partnership with QuickBooks, we can access that data and we can link it to a project, right? So rather than LiveCosts having to go out and start to try and integrate with every bank account out there, there's no need for us to do that. Big companies like QuickBooks have already done it, but so we can leverage that partnership. And what it looks like is that in your LiveCosts account, you can open up your documents folder. You've got your POs and your stock and your supplier invoices, but you've also got your client invoices. And in client invoices, I've got a live link here into my account software within QuickBooks. So by opening up that little tab, I can then see all the invoices that have been raised, whether that could be the HSE project or whatever the case might be. And it just asks me to create a link between the invoice that's been created in QuickBooks and what project it belongs to in LiveCosts. Now, that's a live link, right? So, for example, it tells me what the total value on that invoice is and what's being paid against it, which is exactly what we're talking about in terms of being reconciled against your bank account. So, for example, when the invoice is raised initially, we give it an amber status on the LiveCosts side. And as it's being paid off or drawn down, whatever way you want to put it, we then just draw down against that amber status. So for example, it'll show us on the LiveCosts side, if only 50K was paid against that, you're going to have a 50-50 split on your toolbar between green and amber. And as it's being paid off and being reconciled in the bank account, we can then have a view in LiveCosts to see what's happening. The result of all of that really is that every project that we look at now, we're going to get an instant view. Right, we get a real-time view on what's the contract value in place here, how much have I claimed off the client, what was the initial budget that I set for this, how much have I got in terms of committed costs, so costs that are out there that I don't have invoice for, what's been approved, how am I tracking at a phase level, how am I tracking within the phase level, what have I spent on materials within that phase as an example, and we can just get access to that data in real time, of course, as well.